And so that's why I feel it's important for us all to look at our lives, look at our society, step back and say, is this really working for us anymore? And if not, how can we change it?
Our climate system is breaking down. We can only mitigate it if we don't rely solely on the shift from fossil fuels to more renewable sources of electricity, even if the world agrees to do it. We must restore nature in order to remove billions of tons of carbon and bring down global temperatures to safer levels. And we must address the twin issues of population and the overconsumption of our planet's finite resources. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Phoebe Bernard, Professor of Environmental Futures and Conservation Biology at the University of Washington, Research Associate at the University of Cape Town, and Founding Director of the Stable Planet Alliance. She's also the co-producer of an upcoming documentary, The Climate Restorers. A warm welcome, Phoebe.
Thank you so much, Dale. Always such a pleasure to speak with you. I really appreciate the invitation.
Well, I've wanted a long time to speak with you, so this is great. Phoebe, so we're into the UN in the moment of a decade on ecosystem restoration. How are we doing?
I must say it's been a little bit of an underwhelming response so far, and I feel that we need to pull out all the stops. We all know that we're coming up to a big baseline that has often been regarded as pretty pivotal in the crossroads of humanity that we're facing here, 2030. And the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration is this decade from 2021 to 2030. In addition to ecosystem restoration, of course, there are so many other things that are required, that are a response to broken systems, deteriorating trends and conditions. And many people have found this overwhelming and stressful to deal with. And I think that's largely because we tend to treat them as independent problems, independent crises, independent emergencies. And as scientists, we have tended, rightly or wrongly, to use that kind of language. But the good news, I think, is that all of these things are really symptoms of the same problem. So dealing with the loss of biodiversity, dealing with climate change, dealing with the degradation of ecosystems, even dealing with unemployment or opioid addiction or road rage, they are actually all part of all symptoms of the same problem. So solving them, in theory, is a pretty simple situation that will make so many more things right, not only with our climate and our planet, but also with our society, our civilization.
So we need to shift our mindset entirely. We need to shift to a whole new paradigm. We need to become a much better human race, and we need to do it really quickly.
Yeah, we've got about 6 or 7 dimensions of massive human change to make, all in the next decade. And usually if humanity attempts these things, it can take centuries. We have to figure out, if we do want to survive, how to accelerate these things. So I've gone into acceleration mode. But yes, think of all the change we need, not only in the psychological human mindset realm, but the economic realm, the political realm, the social and cultural realm, the logistical and technological realms. There is a place for that. And so we need to think about changing everything. You know, Naomi Klein was right. The times we're in change everything. And we need to be prepared for pretty radical change on all different dimensions at once, which is quite a destabilizing thing. So we've got to also keep conscious of how to keep our hand on the tiller.
Right. Well, of course, right now the world is in this horrible state of all these wars going on, not only Ukraine, not only Israel and Gaza, but many other wars are happening all around the world. And we're
Yeah.
putting energy there where we need to put energy into climate restoration. And there are some very good possibilities. And of course, you work closely with Peter Fakowski, who we've had on the channel, and his book, The Climate Restoration, which I'll just hold up for a minute, which posits a future that can sustain the human race. Yay!
Yeah.
So much concentration has gone into, oh, we have to get rid of fossil fuels. We have to get rid of fossil fuels, that people lose the fact that, we have to do these other things just as radically. And one of those things is to look at our population and to look at how the role of women in this process, empowering the women and providing birth control. I know the Stable Planet Alliance, of course, is in the forefront of that.
It is inspired in part by Peter Fikowski's book. It goes well beyond the book to ask questions about our whole civilization. And so segueing from that to your later comments, I think we have to, this is a real moment to step back in human civilization and look at where we are going and where we've come from and what lessons we need to learn. And I was lucky in my own life to go through that process at a national scale a couple of times, with working in Namibia, for example, at the crossroads of its own history, from colonialism to independence, and asking itself, okay, from now on in, what kind of a society do we want to have? And how are we going to get there from here? And then later moving to post-apartheid South Africa in its democratic transition. And similarly, what are we going to do now? What are the values upon which we base our society? I've written that I feel that these are the times, the analogous times, where humanity as a whole is going through these crossroads, and that these two countries, among others, can teach us how to navigate these crossroads. But if we look at what we might loosely call Western civilization, it's brought us, lots of wonderful things. Anyone who has visited the Sistine Chapel or Cambridge University or, an astronomical center anywhere cannot help but appreciate Western civilization. But among the roots of it, I think it's fair to say, are a certain degree of cultural arrogance. And that has become expressed in these times in countries such as where you and I are now living, the United States, as a hefty and quite toxic degree of entitlement and convenience, cultural arrogance, human supremacy, so that the earth is basically a food pantry, as the sociologist Aline Christ calls it, that we feel the earth is just put here for our own convenience, our own profiteering, our own use, and that our needs are greater or more important than any other species needs. So all of these things, rugged individualism is another, very central to American society. All of these things take us to a point from which we can't easily escape. And so navigating the future of society, getting to a kinder, wiser, more humble civilization ahead, much more sustainable civilization ahead, is a challenge with these mindsets. So our recent paper that a bunch of us put out in Science Progress at the end of September 2023 argued that a lot of our previously adaptive human behaviors for survival and reproduction, like being able to hoard enough food to survive the winter, being wary of incoming invading tribes and things like that. Those had a certain adaptive power in the past, but with 8 billion of us on the planet, all prone to aggression and violence when resources are scarce, inclined to hoard and acquire more and more stuff. It's clearly become maladaptive. And those behaviors have been exploited by industries, and the marketing industry has been the facilitator of that. So our paper, which was a collaboration of scientists and marketing strategists who are disaffected and unhappy with the industry as it currently is practiced, proposed that because time is so short, we may need to alter those same powers of marketing manipulation for good rather than for evil.
How do we do that? That sounds great. That is a
There's
good
a very
idea.
interesting group of people in New Zealand, or coordinated by the Mertz Institute in New Zealand. They call themselves the Overshoot Behavior Lab. I'm a part of it, but sort of behind the scenes part of it. And it's spelling out in quite concrete ways how we can tailor messages to shift people's behavior for the future, for the common good, for better connection, better satisfaction in life, rather than just accumulating a lot of stuff, which may lead us to feel alienated or spiritually empty. So, just taking the tools of the marketing industry, but trying to shift them to work for good rather than for private profiteering.
Well, everything, the whole international shipping industry, it's appalling to think about all these ships traveling about this fragile ocean where I don't know how many Hiroshima bombs per second seem, the equivalent heat is going off. We have to protect the oceans. Such a major, it's the forefront of our problem. And, with Antarctica, I think you've been to Antarctica, as I read in your resume, now missing a big piece of it, even in their winter time, is quite frightening.
Yeah,
It's hard to imagine how we're going to do this.
I grew up by the sea, and I've long dreamt of the wilds and mountains of Antarctica and the Himalayas. And so when I was invited to apply for a women's leadership course, advanced course for women in science, technology, medicine, and mathematics in Antarctica, I honestly had quite mixed feelings. My whole being wanted to be there. My whole logical brain said, but you'll have to fly to get there. There's no other way, even though I was living in South Africa at the time. So in theory, it might have been possible to take a boat to Ushuaia, Argentina, but it really wasn't possible or affordable. I flew. It was one of the times that I decided to break my own flying ban. You're right. All of these things are happening at an excessive level, an obscenely excessive level, and setting up obscene inequalities as well as a result. I used to be a negotiator for the UN, for the Biodiversity Convention, on behalf of Namibia. And while I was there, I saw the World Trade Organization in action. They're huge teams of people that would come in with their suits and shiny shoes to dominate the discussions. And it became very clear to me that in the world of realpolitik globally, the World Trade Organization wears much bigger boots than all of the environmental conventions put together. Now, we've seen the UNFCCC, the Climate Change Convention, become much more significant, but that's been very much at the expense of the others. And so I'm trying to help people understand that each one of these things is related, and that we need to step back, having taken a breath and looked at what kind of a society we want to be in the future, what kind of civilization we want to be in the future. We've got to step back and ground our values for that civilization in a different connection to nature, a different prioritization for the Climate Change Convention, the Biodiversity Convention, human rights conventions. And, maybe in the future, these conventions no longer exist, but we've got to ground those values as quite central to our work going forward as humanity, if indeed we do decide that we want to go forward as humanity.
Yes.
It's not
Yes.
definite
Yes.
that
Well,
we
that's
will
in
at
question.
this rate.
Well, you bring up the United Nations, and of course, we know that this year it's going to be in Dubai. But you've said to me that this is not the disaster that I originally thought it was. Do you have some hope that this COP will be successful in some way?
I don't think I said that, Dale. What I did say is that I have a couple of trusted friends who say the future is not yet written on that topic, and that we might be surprised by Dr. Sultan Al Jaber that the oil companies have proven themselves spectacularly resistant to morals and ethics expressed by the rest of humanity, and certainly by nonprofits or even environmental conventions. So what if a forward-looking, as he professes to be, oil exec tries to pull a rabbit out of a hat and really change things? I'm not saying it couldn't happen. I'm doubtful, but I'm not saying it couldn't happen.
Mhm. Well, it's more hopeful than I've been feeling about it.
Yeah.
We wish that these climate conferences were valuable and that they were binding. The Paris Accord would have been wonderful if it had actually succeeded and it had been binding, but it isn't. And as long as it's not enforceable, it doesn't seem to be, plausible. And there's no other, you know, framework that's really bringing people together, but still 70,000 people flying over to Dubai seems to be counterproductive in some way, shockingly.
I couldn't bring myself to do it. I did go to COP27 against my better judgment, and I'm not completely unhappy that I did, but every action that we individually take has to be weighed up in terms of what is the personal cost, the financial cost, the carbon cost, the time cost, the stress cost in terms of one's personal health, versus the ability that it may have to lever transformative global change. Now, I've thrown my whole life into big, ambitious global transformative change right now. And I decided that going to COP27 to talk about an alternative future for humanity may justify the plane cost. But who's to know that, nature doesn't really care about wishful thinking or self-justification or even promises for the future. The emissions heat up the planet now, whatever the rationale may be. It's a hard calculus. It really is.
It is a hard calculus, and I have my friends who are going. I say, okay, good for you. I wouldn't dream of it personally, yeah, because I do that. I think, does the Earth need me to go there? Me? No.
Yeah, yeah,
What am I going to do there that's so important that it's worth justifying that tremendous expenditure of
yeah.
energy and the flying? And it's hard to imagine that at this point in history we're going to make this massive shift that we all want to see and are talking about and hoping for. And I love talking to you, and hearing the hope in your voice. For some people say, hopium, but just that we still have some time here, and it's still okay-ish if we can go to, I've seen in your Stable Planet Alliance, enoughism. For one thing,
Yeah,
enough is enough, and then realize you have enough, and you don't need any more clothes, and you don't need to eat meat, and you don't need to travel to, I don't know, Indonesia or something just for the fun of it. This is not fun anymore.
yeah. And that's the key to enoughism. Just having enough to live a satisfying life with connection and being seen and heard and loved, but not inflicting stress and busyness and travel and competition and stuff that doesn't serve us anymore. And I realized this, I guess, myself about 20 years ago. I was writing a sustainable living column for a glossy community-free magazine. Those adjectives don't often go together, but in South Africa, there was this glossy free community magazine. And I wrote a piece one week about leaving my car at home and taking public transit to work. Now, it was up and over a mountain pass. It was a half an hour drive, and it was about a 40-minute train trip with a 20-minute walk at the end of it. I felt so much better. I was saving so much money. I was reconnecting with people and learning languages on the train. And so I just had this epiphany that it's not about sacrifice so much as about reconnecting with the things that we haven't even realized we've been missing. And that is humility and connection with our fellow humans and with nature and our fitness. And so that's why I feel it's important for us all to look at our lives, look at our society, step back and say, is this really working for us anymore? And if not, how can we change it?
Yes, well, in the little bit of time we have, I would like to give you an opportunity to say something about this documentary, which is very exciting. That's coming up. That's narrated by Peter Coyote.
Thank you. Yeah, no, this is one of the projects in my life that I feel most excited about. It is, one of those things that makes you feel this is what I was put on this planet for. Not that I believe in fate, I don't, but it has that feeling in my heart. The Climate Restorers is a 4-part documentary series. It was intended first as a single film, but we had so much important footage and so many people that we needed to speak to. And we wanted to make it a film series about the future of humanity and the choices we have. Do we accept an inevitable dysfunctional downhill slope into dystopia? Or do we still have agency? So you referred to hopium recently, and I want to say it's not so much hope I have as the right, I think, combination of determination and confidence and just kind of stroppiness, I guess. I'm old enough to feel stroppy, that I don't want to give up on our society. I don't want to give up on the people I love and the forests that I love just because we can't be bothered to change things, that we have people turning on each other and accusing each other of hopium. I mean, for God's sake, there's one way to make things, fail, and that is to give up on them. And so, yes, I do have a Zen teacher, and one of the teachings of Zen is detachment. But everything we know and love is at stake here. So I am not going to detach from my own agency in helping to shift that. Now, I'm not naive enough to believe that any one person can do it, but I have realized that in my old age, and it's one of the great things about having silver hair, that you develop a certain convening power. At least in Africa, where I've been living and working most of my adult life, elders are actually still listened to. They don't become invisible. They're not treated with scorn, and they're not sold endless beauty products to make them look 20 again. They're actually respected. And so I don't give a shit if people in the US don't feel that way. I'm going to find my agency to try and shift things by convening big global initiatives like the Global Restoration Collaborative, which is this lively and dynamic organization co-founded with John D.Liu to bring women and youth and ecosystem restoration communities and climate restoration communities and social community facilitators all together with indigenous cultural bridges to restore vast scale amounts of land and sea and waters, and to also restore the fabric of our local communities in the people that are doing that restoration work. So I believe that we can work towards a restoration economy, which is a kind of donut economics that is focused heavily on repairing the climate, the planet, and our society at the same time, and a regeneratively minded civilization. So, you know, I don't mind being big and bold and brash in my old age, because there's a lot at stake. But with respect to the documentary series, this supports what we are doing by looking at alternatives to just inevitably increasing greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, inevitably increasing unstable climate and disastrous climate events. And we know from history that when you have a destabilizing climate, whether it's a volcanic eruption or whatever may have caused it, that you tend to get economic instability, political instability, and social unrest. So we need to stop that from happening now, as soon as we possibly can rein in the brakes. And so the Climate Restorers looks at the people that are changing the capacity to restore the climate and the planet. So it looks at vast scale ecosystem restoration. It looks at some of the ecosystem and nature-based technologies that can draw carbon down from the atmosphere on a pretty big scale. And most of them are not yet working. They're not at scale yet, but we need to pull out the stops so that we can figure out if some of them can be, because we need every tool in the toolbox right now, or every weapon in the arsenal, if that's your kind of metaphor, and I know it's not yours. It's really an everything, almost everywhere, all at once moment for humanity. And so we've got to make it happen. And if we go down trying, then at least we know we've done all we can. But I firmly believe that we have enough agency to change the trajectory for biodiversity, at least many species, if not all, for humanity, at least many children and cultures, if not all, and that is worth the last, couple of decades of one's productive life.
Yeah, I mean, we have to try we have to do whatever we can, because we're still alive, and where there's life, there's possibility, and we are its agents.
Yeah, absolutely. The hill is really steep. The odds are long. Nonetheless, we have no choice but to try. And I've been lucky to be born to a cheerful, determined mother and a wise father, so that I'm determined to try.
Well, great, Phoebe. I think that was a perfect ending, and I really enjoyed talking with you today. I'm so glad that we got to do this finally, and good luck with the film. I'm really looking forward to that when it does appear.
Thank you so much. It'll be out in early 2024, and the website you can probably put in the notes, but it's backtourfuture.net.
The Climate Restorers presents the facts in easy to understand and compelling terms. This isn't another catastrophe story. It's a detective story, a mystery, an adventure, and a love story. Against a backdrop of real possibilities, we explore the enormous challenges and opportunities that methane and CO2 removal present. We ask, how can you take a process that works in the lab to a global scale? Do business and profit have a place in climate solutions? And where do you draw the line between safety and a world out of time when the risks are so great? The challenges and the enormous possibilities are real. But how can we know the answers if we don't even know the right questions to ask? The world doesn't need to be this way. The choices we make today will have consequences for all future generations. So join us, get informed and choose your path as we navigate our way back to our future.